Street's quiet, then her voice cuts through. "You think rules don't apply to you?" I knew this wasn't going to end well the second she opened her mouth. Laura steps in close, too close. Finger jabs his chest. Another shove. Daniel doesn't blink. A scratch glows red on his neck. Not fresh, not old. She sees it. Smirks. Cars slow, neighbors stare. No badge on her today. Just attitude and control. He doesn't speak. He doesn't move. But his eyes flick. Just once, to a small black box on a tree behind her. She doesn't notice, but we do, and that changes everything. Daniel didn't say a word, didn't need to. The locker closed with a soft click, not a slam, just final. His badge came off next, not ripped off, not tossed, just peeled, like someone taking off a label that used to mean something. But he left the nameplate. That stayed, shiny, centered, almost like a warning. Outside the briefing room, no one looked up. A new recruit shifted in his seat, met Daniel's eyes, then turned away too fast. Orders were posted that morning. Daniel, 27 years in the force, clean file, 4 commendations. Assigned solo night patrol, Sector D, the dead end, the one they use for internal reviews. Quiet punishment with no paperwork. Laura didn't even glance his way. She was laughing with someone at the back, gloves still tucked in her belt, like a hunter who already bagged her prey. She knew. She knew this meant no backup, no partner, no voice on the other end of the line. Just Daniel and the dark, and everyone let it happen. In the lot behind the station, Daniel moved slow, deliberate, the kind of quiet that makes others uncomfortable. He reached into the trunk, pulled out his flashlight, paused, turned it in his hand once, just enough for the scratched glass to catch the orange security light, a smear still faint on the lens. It hadn't cleaned off since last week. He didn't try again. He tucked it into his coat, let the weight settle. Then he stood there, still, longer than he needed to. Not frozen, just listening. There was something in the air, not fear, not yet. But the shift had started. A motion sensor clicked. Light swept the yard. Someone passed through the back door. Daniel didn't look, didn't ask. But he knew someone had seen him and chose not to speak. That said enough. The trail cut through the woods like a scar. No moon tonight. Just the crunch of Daniel's boots and the low hum of his cruiser idling behind him. Everything else, still. He scanned the edge of the park, a broken fence, some tire tracks, faint. Then he saw it. A car, no lights, no engine. Parked too neatly under a line of overgrowth, near the old maintenance path, where no one should be after midnight. Daniel didn't draw his weapon, didn't call it in. He just walked closer, quiet, steps timed to the wind. As he neared the car, the driver's side window rolled down. A familiar face, Officer Green. Green tensed, hand halfway to the console before recognizing him. "Daniel," he said too fast, then slower. "I thought you were patrolling the west lot tonight." The words hung, heavy, too specific. Daniel didn't flinch, didn't nod, just stood there, eyes level. Green looked away first. Inside his jacket pocket, Daniel's thumb flicked once. A silent beep. Recording started. "No backup?" Green tried again, trying to fill the air. "Long shift. Hope they don't keep you out here alone too often." Daniel didn't answer. He glanced at the trunk of the parked car, scuffed, rear plate smudged, but he said nothing. Just turned, one hand grazing his flashlight, the other still in his coat. He walked back to his cruiser, didn't rush. As he opened the door, the radio crackled. "HQ to Unit 4. Copy that tonight's check-in is due in 15, Daniel. Don't be late." It wasn't a reminder. It was a voice laced with something colder, less protocol, more pressure. He paused, just one beat, then drove off. No reply. In the rearview mirror, the high beams briefly caught Green's face, still in the car, watching, but not moving. His eyes didn't show guilt, they showed fear, and Daniel saw it. Sometimes the hardest part isn't being right. It's staying quiet while they twist what's right into something else. I've been there, watching, knowing, and choosing not to shout, but to build my case one fact at a time. If stories like this speak to you, stick around, subscribe for more, and tell me below. What would you have done? The emergency meeting was held in the old community hall. Dim fluorescence buzzed overhead, casting pale light on folding chairs that hadn't been used in months. Laura stood at the front, clipboard in hand, speaking like she'd been elected sheriff. No one had asked her to lead, but no one stopped her either. She called it a public safety update, said there was confusion last week. Unfortunate misidentification, she added, lips tight. But mostly she framed herself as the one who'd taken initiative when the system lagged. Daniel walked in 5 minutes late, sat near the back, alone. He didn't interrupt, didn't even shift in his seat. He placed a notepad on the edge of the folding table, pen in hand. It looked like he was scribbling until you saw the pen was custom. A miniature audio recorder, mic facing up. He didn't speak for the first 15 minutes, didn't need to, because Laura was doing all the talking. She spoke of suspicious figures, delivery uniforms that didn't match records. Her voice grew sharper with each line, emboldened by the sound of her own authority. The officer in question, that's what she called Daniel, acted passively in a critical moment. Not a soul interrupted her, until one did. An elderly woman in the third row slowly raised her hand. Her voice was calm, almost shy. "Laura, you said you saw something dangerous, but didn't the person shot have a delivery slip with Daniel's name on it?" Silence. A breath caught somewhere. Laura's mouth opened, then paused. I mean, there was no time to verify. Daniel didn't look up, just clicked his pen once, a tiny sound, sharp, measured. Then, without shifting his tone, he asked a single question. "Who authorized this meeting officially?" Laura blinked. "Sorry?" He looked at her for the first time. The HOA manual requires a security officer present for any emergency session involving weapons discharge. Was there a sign-off? No accusation, no raised voice. But that question lingered longer than any of her speeches. She glanced to the side, toward the door, toward the HOA president's empty chair, then back to Daniel. But he wasn't looking anymore, head down again, writing. What stung wasn't the question. It was the way he didn't wait for her answer. From that moment on, the room felt different. Laura was still standing, but Daniel was steering, not by force, not by volume, but by letting silence dig the holes for them to fall into themselves. And one by one, they would. The silence in the room had weight now, not discomfort, anticipation. You could feel it settle into the bones of the walls. Laura took another sip of water, recomposed her shoulders, and tried to reset the tempo. Let's move forward. As you all know, last Thursday morning, I responded to a suspicious individual loitering near Lot 6. I had reasonable cause to act, based on behavior and potential threats. Some nodded politely. A few looked down. She was still talking like she was in charge. Daniel raised one finger, not high, just enough. "May I?" he asked, quiet even. The room stilled. Laura smiled, too quickly. "Of course, officer." Daniel stood but didn't walk forward. He stayed at the back, voice steady, calm. "You stated earlier that the shooting was a rapid response to a perceived weapon, correct?" She nodded. "Emergency situation," she echoed, "split-second judgment." He waited a beat. Then, "Did you submit any request for backup or alert dispatch prior to discharging your weapon?" That was it. One sentence. Laura's mouth tightened. There wasn't time. It was unfolding too fast. Daniel didn't blink, didn't react. Instead, he reached into his jacket, pulled out a small flash drive, walked forward. No rush, no drama. Just placed it gently on the meeting table in front of the HOA moderator. "This is a copy of internal radio logs from that morning, reviewed by technical ops. There were no outgoing transmissions from your issued device between 6:15 and 6:45 a.m. He stepped back. No voice raised, no accusation made, but the impact echoed. Laura opened her mouth, but nothing came. Her eyes flicked across the room. Faces stared back, blank, waiting. Then, from the far corner, an older officer, white hair, dark uniform, leaned forward slightly and gave a slow nod. Once, deliberate. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The weight shifted, the balance tipped, and Laura felt it. "I had intel from a private source," she offered, her voice tightening. "Someone off record. That's why." Daniel didn't respond, didn't even lift his head. He looked instead at the meeting chair and said, "No further questions," and sat back down. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded, because now everyone in that room was thinking the same thing. She shot first. She never called it in. And now, she's scrambling, not because she's being attacked, but because Daniel asked one question, the kind that doesn't need a follow-up. And in that moment, without raising his voice, without declaring a single charge, Daniel had pulled the thread. Now they all watched to see what else would unravel. The chair cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Laura," he said, eyes steady, "we're moving to the formal inquiry portion. As per Regulation 23.4, any discharge of a firearm must be followed by a written incident report within 2 hours." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "When did you submit yours?" Laura blinked fast. Her hands were suddenly still on the table. I experienced psychological shock from the incident. There was a delay in my processing." She stopped short. The excuse came out brittle, like it didn't believe itself. Daniel didn't react. He didn't need to. Instead, he slid a single paper forward on the table, just enough for the chair to see. A printed email confirmation. "Statement from the night shift supervisor," Daniel said flatly. "No incident report received from Lieutenant Laura's internal account. Not within 2 hours, not within 72. Laura's lips parted like she wanted to respond, but nothing came out. The room didn't gasp, it exhaled. All at once the silence took on a new texture, tight, aware, final. Across the table, one of the board members removed their glasses and slowly set them down. From the back row, a uniformed officer leaned in, voice calm but clear. "Ma'am," she said, "I handle documentation. If I miss a filing deadline by even an hour, I'm flagged for procedural breach. If I miss one by 3 days, I'm out." It was an accusation. It was procedure. But it cut deeper than any insult. Laura's jaw clenched. Still, no words. The same woman continued. "You said earlier that it was a high-risk situation, but the person shot was holding a delivery slip. That's what your neighbor told us, right?" Laura nodded faintly, like she couldn't believe the words were happening in real time. Daniel stayed silent. He leaned back just slightly, letting the moment do the work. Not a word, not a smirk, just presence. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself anymore. The chair looked down, then up again. "We're going to request a full review of the radio logs, response protocol, and officer report chain." No protest from Laura. Her hands were now in her lap. And then, just as the meeting was about to move on, someone from the far end of the room whispered something barely audible. "Is that her silver star?" Eyes shifted. Yes, pinned right over her left chest pocket. The one she once used as a shield in every meeting. Now, it glinted under the fluorescent lights. Too polished, too loud against the silence. Laura looked down, but the badge stayed where it was, sharp, untouched, and painfully out of place. Nobody took it from her, but everyone saw it now for what it really was. A symbol out of sync with the truth. And somehow, that hurt more than being yelled at. Daniel didn't celebrate. He didn't blink. Because this wasn't revenge. It was correction. One question at a time. Daniel stood. No announcement, no closing words. Just a quiet rise from his chair. The same calm in his shoulders as when he'd first entered. He reached into his coat and placed a thick folder on the table in front of the chairwoman. No label, no summary, just weight. He didn't look at Laura, didn't look at the board. Instead, he said softly, almost too soft to hear, "This isn't to clear my name. It's to see if you still want to fix what's broken." And then he turned, walked toward the door. As he passed the back row, a young officer instinctively stood and saluted. Not out of protocol, but something else. Something unspoken. Daniel paused briefly at the door. Just 2 seconds, then pushed it open. Daylight spilled in. Not blinding, but full and steady. washing over the council table, lighting up the unopened files. Behind him, no one moved, no voices, no applause, only the sound of pages beginning to turn. He didn't look back, but the door remained ajar, just wide enough for the light to stay. A man had walked out, and Justice had just walked in.